Hey audio friends, welcome back to the channel. MrAyrit here, and today I've got for you the Topping A90 Discreet. This is the brand new hottest thing from Topping, and it's got a very killer volume control. Oh, that's so enjoyable. So enjoyable. Now, outside of that very cool feature, is this thing the best amp I've ever heard? Is it the best amp you can buy under $1,000? Well, let's get into it and talk about that a little bit. For some people, it probably is. For some people, it probably is. But for other people, it probably isn't. Okay, so let's see what we get here. So this is a typical Topping product in build and design, which is to say it's pretty much just beautifully built. Very well thought out design. I love... you can't see it right now, but I love the numbers that are on here for volume control. I absolutely adore the new volume system with the R2R setup that clicks through things. Like, it just feels so good to change the volume and you know exactly where you're at, and it's like perfectly balanced. Okay, so it works flawlessly for that. Now, what is a problem here, what I don't like, is there's no toggle switches on the front. So changing between preamp, headphone out, RCA, XLR, etc., right? Changing between all that stuff, you have to use the remote. You have to. There's no option to change that stuff on here. They don't have a multi-function thing, and you can't do it, right? You have to. You have to use the remote unless all you're doing is just changing the volume control. Okay, I dislike that. I like toggle switches. I like to be able to I sit at my desk, right? I don't want to have to use extra remotes if I don't have to. That being said, there are a couple of cool features built into the remote that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So what else do you got going on, right? Well, you've got balanced outs, 4.4 and 4-pin XLR. You've got a single-ended, and then of course you got the volume knob over there. Right now, all you have over here is just little LEDs to tell you what things you have selected, but you can really set up like any combination of those that you want, which is pretty cool. Okay, on the back, you've got USB-C in for like firmware updates. EXT, I honestly don't really know what that is, right? It's some type of, I don't know. I assume that maybe like they have one of their DACs can output EXT into there. I don't really know. I've never seen that before. It's like a big chunky coax almost with a bunch of little plugs in there. You got balanced in, you got RCA in, you got RCA out, you got balanced out. You got this little ground lift thing in case you need to use that. 12 volt trigger. Again, I'm not really sure what that is, to be perfectly honest with you. And then you've got just their power cable in and the on off switch on the back. Now you can switch it on off like with the remote or by holding in the button there, the big button there, so you can do it that way without having to switch off the back. So that's pretty much the tour of the thing. I mean, it's a simple device. If it outside of having to use the remote so much, I have no problem with it. Okay. Hey, just a quick jump in here. Sorry, next morning, which is why the crazy hair, but I just wasn't happy with how I left it with the EXT and that 12 volt trigger thing on the A90D here. So did a little more research. Apparently, Topping has something called the EXT90 and the Pre90, which is like a pre-amplifier, and then the EXT90 is like, it's almost just like a hub where you can plug in like a bunch more, pieces of equipment to it. So that is what that EXT port is for, is you can use it in combination with the Pre90 and EXT90, which I'll link those down below, and that lets you hook up like, I don't know, like 6 different devices or 6 additional devices to this thing. So it's Topping's way of being able to make this 90 stack. So if you got the D90 SE, the EXT90, the Pre90, and the A90D, you could have like all of your hi-fi stuff just coming into this one hub is what that's all about. Now the 12 volt trigger thing, it's just a way to trigger the amp to turn on and off. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the intended use is for that, but I assume it has something to do with that big stack, so you can use like one remote to turn them all on and things like that. So that was just, I wanted to share that little piece of research with you. So thanks, back to the original video. Now, the remote, I'm just going to show you, I'm just kind of running through the different features of this thing. But basically you use any combination of these buttons here to change, you know, what your input source is, what you're outputting to, whether you're running the preamp, whether you're not running the preamp, whether you're running the headphone out, whether you're not running the headphone out. And I love all those options, right? I like being able to do all those things because that means you can leave your speakers hooked up, you can leave your headphones hooked up, and even if you don't want to use them, you can shut that off and then you can crank the volume on other things. You don't have to worry about like blowing out your headphones or something like that, right? So I really like that feature. I do. Then you got, of course, you got gain choices. Now this says it has 3 gain stages when I look at the material online, but it only switched from high to low for me. So I don't know why that is exactly. I don't know if there was supposed to be a medium there that for whatever reason my unit isn't going to, which by the way was sent out by Feliks Audio. They're not trying to influence this review in any way, but I do thank them very much for giving me the opportunity to review this new device here. Okay. Brightness, and then you've got these C1, C2, right? And so C1, C2, that's kind of interesting because basically if you hold one of these buttons down, it will store what the settings are in the A90D at that point in time. So then I can just click. So once I store it, it's like a preset on your, you know, your FM tuner or whatever. Like now I can click C1 once it's programmed in, it'll just take it right back to those exact settings. So if you run a couple of different setups or something like that, you can switch quickly and easily between custom 1 and custom 2 there. So that's kind of cool. I do like that little feature. All right. So that, I mean, that pretty much covers like what the device does and all that. What else do you want to know about it? I mean, it's pretty powerful. It's like 10 watts or something like that. Now, how that delineates out once you get to like 600 ohms, I'm not sure. Long story short, it's got plenty of power, right? I don't think you're going to be worried about that at all with this amplifier. As far as sound goes, though, and this is where we really want to talk about this, is this the end all be all headphone amplifier? Well, if you want just a clean, kind of flat, neutral signal, yeah, I mean, I don't really honestly, I don't really have any complaints about it. Normally, I feel like topping stuff, it just doesn't stir my soul. I would say that this still kind of falls into that category, although I wouldn't say that like if I was only listening to this, I think I'd be perfectly happy with it, is what I would tell you. Now, in my case, I've got a Schiit Mjolnir Gen 1 over here, right? This is a decade-old amplifier. It's gigantic. It's still got a lot of power. It's only balanced, so it doesn't have the versatility of the A90 Discrete. But that being said, on every single headphone I tried, which was 8XX, it was Aria Stealth Edition, Hi-Fi-Men Edition XS, OG NIghthawks, Sennheiser 660S, what am I forgetting here? T60 Argons, Focal Lex. On all of these headphones, whenever I did an immediate A-B switch and I was listening to the topping and I switched to the Schiit, or I switched from the Schiit and then switched to the topping and I was going back and forth, I don't think there's a single instance where I liked the A90D better. I just didn't. Okay. Was it bad? No, it's not bad at all. It's perfectly fine. It just doesn't fill me with joy. It does things and it does it well. And it's a good, clean signal, but there's nothing extra, right? There's no extra flavor. There's no extra interest. There's no extra excitement. Just, it is just a flat, neutral amplifier. It's been too long since I've heard the original A90. I did think that was an okay amplifier. I thought that was the best topping product that I'd heard at the time. I think this is the best topping product I've heard. How much is it an improvement over the A90? I don't know. Like, I don't have the A90 with me, right? It sounds, I think it's in the same ballpark as the original A90. I do love this volume control on this thing, though. I love that. What I would say is I'll take my Mjolnir any day over this thing, right? That's not to say that the A90D isn't good, okay? It's fine. And if you use something like IEMs a lot at your desk, this is going to be way more versatile than the Schiit Mjolnir because you have such great control over the volume, right? You can put this thing on low gain, you can take the volume all the way down to like 1 and you're going to have perfectly matched channels. Like, that's pretty insane. And and I could see a lot of people going for this just because of that reason. Like, because of it's so clean. Those perfectly matched channels. Like, it outputs, inputs, it does a lot of things, and it does a lot of things really well. I just don't want to leave you with the impression that this is the end-all be-all when it comes to sound in headphone amplification, because I think there are other flavors out there that are more interesting and maybe are better for certain people or certain headphones or certain situations, okay? But can I recommend the A90D as like a starting point if you want to pay? I mean, it's a good price, right? It's what, $600? That's not a terrible price for such a powerful amplifier that has all of these features built in. And then you can make a decision as to whether or not you want something else. This paired with like a tube amp of some sort, that might be a pretty awesome setup, okay? So do I think this is the end-all be-all in headphone amplification? I do not, right? I'd take my Schiit Mjolnir, I'd take my Feliks Echo, I'd take my Quicksilver over this thing in a heartbeat. But that's not saying that this thing is bad or that this thing doesn't have a place in a lot of people's systems, because I really think it does, okay? I just think there are more specialized things out there that might stir your soul a little bit more than this guy here. If stirring your soul and all that sounds like just fluff to you, and all you want is just solid performance that you don't have to really think about, that does pretty much anything you want it to do, A90D, all the way. You can't go wrong with it, really. I mean, honestly, I'd say a great place to start. If you want some more flavor after that, then you can explore. But you can't really go wrong with this thing, as far as I can tell. So it's hard for me to say you shouldn't try it if that type of sound, just a dead neutral flat sound, if that's what you're going for, I say give it a shot. I think it's adequately priced. I think on the used market, wait a couple of months and you'll be able to buy one for less than $500 easy. Or since this guy came out, now maybe look for the original A90 and try that out and see if you like that, because you'll be able to buy that for like $250 or maybe even less at this point. I mean, who knows? I bought one for $300 and that was half a year ago, before this thing was even out. So I think the A90, original A90 prices, which that was already a very functional and very high power amplifier, those prices are going to be going through the floor with this thing coming out, I would imagine. So that might be something to keep an eye on as well. If you're just curious about like a top of the line topping product, I might say you could go that route too. Okay, great device, does what it needs to do, super clean. It is what it is. It is the pinnacle of a topping amplifier. And for some, that'll be endgame. For others, like myself, it's not, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Okay, so I think that's it. That's all I have. That's all the commentary I have on this amplifier, right? I was excited to do this. Thank you, A-Post, for sending it out. I was very interested to hear this and see how I thought it stacked up to the hype that's coming out about it, right? Definitely, if you've tried this amplifier, drop your opinions down below. Do you have the original A90 so you can A-B them? Did you find a difference? Do you think it's a big upgrade? All that stuff down below. Help everybody out. Share your opinions. If you like what I'm doing here, if you like how I review things, if you appreciate, maybe not going straight for the measurements and picking out a little more character, consider subscribing to the channel. I do try to do a couple of videos a week on hi-fi headphones stuff. And if you want to support the channel more, there's also a Patreon down there and a new merch shop. Okay, so check that out too. Some of it's stuff that I've done myself. Some of it's AI stuff that I'm playing around with as well. So that's been a lot of fun for me, and maybe I'll make a video on that as well in the future if you're interested. So drop comments about that down below as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I will hopefully see you in the next one.